So this event at the University of Waterloo is co-sponsored by WPERC, the Coalition of Muslim Women of KW, the Sikh Students Association, the Muslim Students Association, as well as the Sikh Students Association, and the Atheist and Agnostics and Freethinkers of UW. It's a lot of groups. So our first speaker for the night is Dania Suleman, and Dania works with Amal Quebec, which is Association of Muslims and Arabs for Secular Quebec. She's a lawyer in Quebec, and she is also currently doing her master's in religious identity and feminism. Before we get started, we would just like to acknowledge that this event is taking place on stolen Indigenous land and particularly belongs to the Six Nations of the Grand River. And now I'd like to present Dania.
Hi everyone, thank you for inviting me, WPERC. I first of all wanted to thank WPERC for inviting a Quebec or French-Canadian speaker, because Quebec is often in the perception that whenever it's being criticized by Canada, it's always about Quebec bashing. So I'm here to say that I might do a little bit of Quebec bashing, but at least I'm a Quebec or a French-Canadian, so it's okay. I just wanted to do a little, before going into the main topic, just to do like a little chronological recap for you guys to situate yourselves, like what happened. Basically, le PQ, le Parti Québécois, were elected in 2012. It was mentioned in their program that they were going to have a charter of values, like une charte de la laïcité, une charte des valeurs québécoises, so like a charter of Quebec values, whatever that means. But it was not the basis of their election. Basically, we were in the midst of the biggest student strike that probably a lot of you guys knew, and they were saying that they were not going to have a student fee hike, and so I think that was the basis on which they were elected, and it was not about the charter. The charter came a year later. And so this summer, they announced through Le Journal de Montréal, which is like a crappy little newspaper, that they were proposing to have the Quebec Charter of Values. And just for you to understand how much of an emotional debate this is, when Radio-Canada had the same article, there were over 2,000 comments, and just as a fact, when I went to check Angelina Jolie's little essay about like her double mastectomy, which is supposed to be one of the most commented articles on the New York Post or the New York Times, it had 1,700 comments. So and we're talking about the New York Times all through America, an international newspaper, and now we're talking about the province of Quebec with about 7 million people, and there's over 2,000 comments for one article. So you can just understand how big of an issue it is for a lot of Quebecers, French Canadians. Then there was the announcement of the charter. We were hoping it would never arrive, but it did. And the major points were reinstating the importance of equality between men and women, defining the limits of religious accommodations, which is like a debate we had 6 years ago, giving services with your face shown, and having no ostentatious, sorry for my English, religious symbols. Then, beginning of November, there was the official submission of Bill 60, which is supposed to go in revision during the winter. Basically, they had to drop the word ostentatious because it's actually, there's a subjective interpretation to ostentatious. Ostentatious means what is exaggerated. So who can define what is exaggerated and what is not? So they had to drop it to have ostensible, which is what is visible, so there's like less of a subjective connotation to it. Also, we can question as well, is it really an appearance of neutrality that they want, or is it more a sense of normality? So normality is that a lot of people do not have religious, attire or religious symbols on themselves, but does that really guarantee the neutrality and mutual service? Obviously, I'm not sure about that. And just to clarify, it wouldn't just affect the public sector. Whatever private sector that offers a service to the public sector would have to respect the charter, which is huge. So there's like over 500,000 employees in the public service, but then again, we don't even have the numbers of how many contract there is with the private sector that would have to respect the charter. So this is like, anyways, it's a big thing. A lot of us agree with about 95% of the bill. Obviously, the one that got everybody polarized was the prohibition of religious attire, religious garment, or religious symbols, and especially since a discrete cross would be allowed. So it's kind of, I mean, there's a deep sense that it's very discriminatory to other religions that have maybe much more of a visible kind of religious symbol. And I don't like to use the word symbol because I actually do not believe that it's a symbol. I think it's actually a practice. Like when the person is wearing that, they are in a state of practice. They're not in a state of wanting to identify themselves in a public space. That's not the intention. At least that's what I think of it. That's what I understand from it. So you had on one side whoever was pro-charter were seen as independentist, intolerant, racist Quebecers, and I think that's not nuanced. And on the other side, whoever was against the charter were seen as Canadian, multiculturalists, free, you know, like that have no limits. And I also think that's absolutely not nuanced, because I'm not necessarily a multiculturalist. Like I think I have another vision of integration and communities and minorities. And I identify myself personally a lot more with Quebec for a lot of different reasons than, let's say, with Canada. But then you were put in like two different categories. You were either Quebecer or you were Canadian. And so that's when I come to the main point of the conference, talking about basically the negative effect it had on religious, cultural minorities, then the feminist debate, or the debate between the feminists, and the positive aspects of this charter. Coming to the negative effects, I'm going to be talking a lot more about the Muslim community than any other community, and it's not because they haven't had any kind of backlash. It's simply because the government itself talks more about Muslims than you do about, let's say, Sikhs or Buddhists or Jews. As an example, Pauline Marois, who is the Prime Minister right now, said hijab is a sign of inequality. Drainville, who is, I don't want to say author, but my lack of vocabulary will say author of the bill, said we should be preoccupied by the rise of Islamism or extremism. And so that's the reason why the Muslim community is by far the community that have had the biggest backlash in the past 3-4 months. So other than the insults, the pulling of hijabs at times, the tension, the verbal racism, the vandalism on a mosque and on a supermarket, the fear of losing job, and the violence of the debate is very important, and I might come back to that, like the violence of the things that are being said. And this I'm quoting Professor Sikh Students. I'll be quoting some people because I'm not the one that's been thinking about everything. She said that another effect that's a long-term effect that we won't actually know is the fact that a lot of Muslims, Sikhs, Jews, French Canadians, or Quebecers have seen their identity being re-questioned in public space. So a lot of us were in a position where we had to prove that we were Quebecers, like, yes, I do read Quebecer poetry, yes, I do watch Quebecer television, yes, my diplomas are from Montreal or from Quebec and this and that. And to have your identity being re-questioned in a public space basically alienates you from the rest of the majority. And so that's actually a long-term effect that we won't know for now. We don't know how kids or teens right now will grow up thinking that they're not part of the Quebecer French Canadian society and how it's going to ghettoize them into another faction, or we don't know like the process of education that they're going to have with this experience that they've had. As an example of things that were being said, one candidate in one of the most diverse quartiers, like district in Montreal, said, she's only a candidate, oh my God. She said, we should welcome more Latin immigrants because they're gonna integrate themselves much faster in the French Canadian society. We shouldn't accept anybody that has a strict cultural rigid code, and we should take off Jewish from Jewish hospital, which is absolutely ironic because, whatever, for obvious reasons. And then Jeannette said, Jeannette, who is kind of like the Oprah of Quebec, but like a lot less charismatic, she said that I would fear, if ever I went to the hospital, I would fear if ever a religious person were to treat me because I don't know what their religion is teaching us. Maybe they let older people die faster, or maybe they let they take care of the men before of the woman. And these are things that have been said in the public space in the media. Baudouin, which is an ex-deputy of Le Parti Québécois, has said, not every Muslim woman is an extremist, but every extremist is a Muslim veiled woman. And this is absolutely problematic as well. Dania Suleman, who is like not an author, but a playwright, very well known as well, has said that Muslim women wearing the veil are crazy, manipulated, and who knows if you're going to find them at the bottom of a lake. So, and if I'm saying these examples, is because the government has legitimized this discord because they have applauded their support of the charter. Do you see what I mean? It's not that they're saying this is okay, but they're saying, oh, since you support the charter, we are applauding your support, but at the same time they're not condemning whatever they're saying in their discourse. And this is how violent the discourse has come. And you won't ever hear these people talking in the same way of Jewish or black people. You would never find someone say, oh, we know why black people are this and that, like the stereotypes, like whatever stereotypes there could be, or whatever stereotypes it could be on Jewish people or Sikh people. And that's why I'll be talking a bit more about the Muslim community, just because they're the ones that have been receiving a lot of the attacks. Okay. Yeah. So another effect that it's been having, and this I'm taking it from Leila Ben Hajouj, that's been doing her thesis on her doctoral thesis on Islamic feminism. She's saying basically not just the Muslim population, but whatever minority tries to speak out about legal issues that they're living, they keep on being put in other spaces of citizenship. And by that she means, and I mean, that deal with your issues first in your home country and then come and talk to us about what type of thing we should be working on in Quebec. And to keep on saying, work with your issues in your own country, is that you're placing that person who lives in Quebec or in Canada, but in another space of citizenship where she can't appropriate herself like a public space of discussion. And that's exactly where, oops, it's over, guys. That's exactly where the debate of the charter actually became a trial of religion and no longer about what type of secular society you want. Because I'm for secularism, and I think a lot of Sikhs, Muslim Jews are for secularism. It's actually one of the bases by which our legal rights are being protected as minorities. So it became a trial of religion, and for nearly 3 weeks or more, articles were being thrown back and forth on the signification of hijab and its pertinence, and it became a theological debate when this whole time it was supposed to be a secular, like a debate on secularism. I mean, not theologically, is it mandatory, is it mandatory, what is exaggerated, what is not exaggerated. And this is exactly where I believe the feminist debate took its whole, how do you say, ampleur, its whole like magnitude. Basically, you had on one side Jeannette. Jeannette was the lady that I spoke about that said, if I were in a hospital, I would fear if ever I got, a service by a minority. I don't know what their religion is teaching them. Basically, their main points, I'm good. Like I'm giving you guys their version. That's exactly what they're saying. They're saying basically they signed a letter in which a lot of celebrities that are feminine celebrities are known in Quebec have signed that letter. Their main points are equality between men and women is at stake with the liberty of the religion, because religions have historically been patriarchal towards women. That's the first point. Second point is she's making a parallel with the right to vote. So she was saying at that time when women had the right to vote, a lot of them were against it, but then with time they realized that actually It's a good right to have, and she's saying the same thing. Maybe now you won't like taking off your veil or taking off your turban, but you'll see that in 10, 15 years, you'll enjoy taking off that veil, taking off that turban. That's a parallel she's making. Anyways. And then they're also saying that they don't believe when a woman is saying that it is her choice because she grew up in an unequal gender dynamics, and so she doesn't realize the symbol of inequality that the veil has. Something to be said about that is that throughout all this feminist debate, and it's not just a feminist debate, it's a debate between feminists as well. So this was very much between women. Not a lot of guys came in to give their opinion. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. We can debate by ourselves. Basically, a lot of people appropriated themselves this sense of equality between men and women, but just to denounce religion, just to denounce one form of patriarchy, and all the other types of form of patriarchy that you can find in commercials, that you can find in the corporate field, that you can find in university. I don't know. I said university, but I'm not in university too. Yeah, in the university too. Whatever. There are a lot of different spaces and places where you can find patriarchy, but all of a sudden, equality between men and women was only to denounce one form of patriarchy, and all the other places where you can find patriarchy are inequalities towards women. No legitimacy or credibility were given to Muslim women or women that were saying that they wear it by choice. On the other side, you have, basically throughout this, you had Quebec, pour un Québec inclusif, that were the main allies towards the minorities. So they were mostly French Canadians, mixed cultural, like whatever culture, whatever belief. Like it was not a typical. It was not necessarily just Muslims or Sikhs or Buddhists. Like it was like a big melting pot. They were the first ones to write, I think, one of the best manifesto against the charter right now. And when Les Jeannettes came out with their reasons why there should be a charter, with like these reasons, Les Inclusives, so feminine of it, came out, and their main points were, and I call them post-colonial feminist, personally. They basically said that there are multiple feminist narratives, that there's not just one narrative to feminism, that feminism cannot be imposed through a paternalistic approach, obviously. They admit that, and I admit it too, that religion historically has been dominating and patriarchal towards women, but now there's a reappropriation within a lot of religion of sacred texts by women to have a feminine lecture of these texts. That emancipation can come in different forms, including a religious one. That autonomy recognizes that a woman has a right to her sense of agency and making decisions for herself. The good note, and that's where we're going into the good side of it, guys. The FFQ, which is the Federation of Women of Quebec, agrees with that type of feminism. And about 2 weeks ago, they had Les États Généraux, which is like a huge conference that has over 1,000 women, exclusively women, that attend that conference to write kind of like a proposed kind of legislation on what should the government be doing with like the rights of women, this and that. And Les États Généraux, the last time we've had one was in 1992, so it's the first one in 20 years. And to know that the FFQ agrees with that type of feminism is actually, it's huge. Like, I don't know if you guys have the equivalence of what we have over there, but it is huge to have that kind of support. So, obviously the charter had as an effect to divide a lot of people, and to me, the key actors that were absent, and it was very heartbreaking for me, but were the students, and I was part of the student movement, and to see that a lot of students that were, how do you say, revendiqués, that were asking for a new pluralistic Quebec were not present in this discussion. Personally, for me, it was very difficult to understand why. And unions were not, like, they haven't, like, they didn't come out necessarily for or against it, but if they're not, I mean, they might be against it, but then at the same time, I mean, unions were not very present. But the positive aspect of it is that it brought a lot of people together. So a lot of Jewish and Muslims started working together, and Sikhs as well, and Buddhists. There's not a lot of Buddhists, I'm sorry, Buddhists here, there are Buddhists here. And you saw a lot of independentists or separatists and federalists working together. So you can name Parizeau, who was one of the key actors in the referendum in '95, with Dorion and Mourani and all the federalists working together against that bill. You had a lot of people organizing themselves. And the following things that I'm going to mention actually comes from a dear friend of mine that's super intelligent. Her name is Bushra Manai, and I like to give credit where you have to give credit. And she's working on these issues. And basically, she says that if you analyze the crisis of religious accommodation that happened in Quebec in 2007 or 2008, and you look at what's happening now, the level of organization is completely different. So basically, right now you have, and I'm sorry again if I'm talking about the Muslim community, but even within the community, there were alliances intra-community, so with the different, I don't like calling them sects, but like different like religious interpretations, so Shia, Sunni, Lebanese, Maghrebian, Anglophone, Francophone, that tend not to talk to each other, not because they don't like each other, but because they live in different parts of Montreal, started collaborating together, and you had an extra alliance as well. So Muslim communities with Quebec Inclusive, that is absolutely not a religious organization, working together. And Quebec Inclusive, if you have to give them a credit, it became a shield towards a lot of religious and cultural minorities backing them, because they had the credit of being white, francophone, and not religious. And that it's sad to say, but it gives you credit that being, it's like, obviously if you're Muslim, you're going to be against it. Do you know what I mean? Or if you're Sikh, you're going to be against it. Or if you're Buddhist, you're going to be against it. But being white, francophone, and being against it, there's a credit that's being given to you that is not necessarily given to us for obvious reasons. So they acted as a shield towards a lot of people. And you have a multiplication of actors, a multiplication of people that were interested in this question and that organized themselves collectively instead of individually. So in the crisis of the religious accommodation, it was usually an individual actor that was voicing their opinion. Now you have collective bodies coming together. And the number of people that are, that's an important point to say. The number of people that are against it is much more important than the number of Muslims and Buddhists and Sikhs and Christians that are against it. Do you know what I mean? Like, that number of people that are against the charter is actually bigger than the number of minorities that are against it. So it makes up for a very big and large group. And another point to mention is that while all this debate happened, a feminist Muslim group that's called, oh my gosh, La Collective des Feministes Musulmanes, so the collective of Muslim feminists, basically took their place. Usually whenever you have to talk about Muslim feminism, it's being talked about through either one singular person or through a university professor or whatsoever. But now you had a collective of women coming together and actually taking their spot in the public space. So those are the positive aspects of it. Obviously I could go a bit more, but maybe we'll have time in the Q&A. In conclusion, I spoke really fast. I thought it was going to be half an hour. Maybe if you have questions, I can like elaborate a little bit more. But yes, in conclusion, basically people are working together. It's absolutely not a battle for religion or communities. It's actually a battle for Quebec and the face that it's going to be having in 10, 15, 20 years. And since I still have 10 minutes left, I'm going to come back to, oh yeah, well I kind of said that. I kind of said everything that I wanted to say, but if you have questions, I'm obviously open for it. Sorry? Yes, yeah, no problem. But yeah, that's about it. I hope you get the picture that I tried like portraying. I hope I gave enough details that you guys wanted to have. That's about it.
wonderful talk. So now we're going to have a panel discussion by some students from UW, by some of the student groups who have co-sponsored this event. So if our panelists could come down, I can introduce them. So our first speaker will be Dania Kaur from the Sikh Students Association.
Okay. Hi, so my name is Dania Kaur. I'm a Sikh. I'm here on behalf of Sikh Students Association of Waterloo. We've gathered here today to discuss the we've gathered here today to discuss the proposed bill by the governing party, Quebec